Yeah, I'll give you a 5-second exercise right now. What is the proudest, greatest moment of your life? 5 seconds. Okay, great. Forget about that one. It's not a good story. Now, I'll give you another 5 seconds. This time I want you to think of your lowest point. The point where you looked around and there were no answers for you. 5 seconds. Think of that moment. That's a great story. That's a great story.
This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners. I can't wait for you all to hear this podcast as we are joined by one of the best communicators that I've ever met, Bo Eason. Bo has become a really good friend over the years and has done a ton of work with us at Advisors Excel and literally worked with hundreds of our advisors now, lots of hundreds actually, and really focused on helping them become better speakers and communicators. The power of your personal story can be a huge differentiator in business, and nobody teaches the strategy behind this better than Bo Eason. That's why I'm excited to have him here. Bo, my friend, welcome to the Business of Advice podcast.
Thanks, Cody. Thanks for having me.
Hey, let's jump in, man. I'm going to start it with this way. Everyone has to hear kind of your story because your background is fascinating, just the different things that you've done in life. And I want people to hear that history. So would you mind just walking us through kind of your crazy life journey as we start off?
Yeah, it is. It is kind of crazy.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's very crazy. So I've based my whole life based on dreams, right? And I draw up these declarations and these dreams, and I spend 20 years trying to achieve them. And I'm usually trying to be the best in the world at whatever occupation that I've chosen. And so when I was a kid, I did that with the position of safety in football.
Yep.
And so when I was 9, I drew up a plan. I started following the plan, and things aren't working out too well. I'm trying to be the best safety in the whole world in the NFL. And as it turns out, nobody wants me. No colleges recruit me. And so I invite myself to a small Division II college, and I play football there. They don't even want me. And lo and behold, I end up, the dream ends up coming true. I get drafted as a top safety in the 1984 NFL draft and got to play in the NFL. And so after 5 years and 7 knee surgeries, I moved on. So I just did the same thing that I did when I was 9, except this time I was 29. And I said, I want to be the best stage performer of my time. And so I moved to New York City and I started studying. I started asking kids in my classes, who's the best stage performer of our time? Because I want to talk to this person. I want them to help me get there. And at that time, it was 1990, they all said, oh, that's Al Pacino. So I said, okay, cool. Where's he? And they go, what do you mean, where's he? He's probably on a movie set. I don't know. And I go, no, I got to talk to this dude because he can tell me how to do what he does if he's the best. And sure enough, within a few weeks, I was at Al Pacino's house, which was crazy to begin with, but it was exactly how you're imagining it right now.
Is this like Scarface Al Pacino, or where was he at?
This was the day that we met. It was during Thanksgiving. The next day he was leaving for LA to shoot a movie called Frankie and Johnny with Michelle Pfeiffer. So it was 1990.
Yeah.
So he'd already done The Godfather. He'd already done Scarface. I think he had just done Goodfellas. No, not Goodfellas. He'd done all those 70s movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was the Godfather, right? And when he introduced himself to me, Cody, he's like, hey, Bo, hey, how you doing? Al Pacino. And I go, yeah, no. I said a cuss word. I said, you're the Godfather, right? I know who you are. Anyway, he was awesome. He was awesome. He told me what my next 15 years were going to look like, drew it out. Like, here's your next 15 years. If you want to be the best at this, being on stage. And so I don't think he thought I was going to do what he said for those 15 years, but I did. And because that's what it took me to get to the position of safety also. So I did it. He came to the show, saw me on stage. It was amazing. And I just seem to keep doing that over and over, like in my speaking world or in my writing world. I kind of do the same thing. I go, I want to be the best at this thing. How can I do it? And I've kind of figured out the principles and a formula to do it, but it does take some years, it does take some time. And so now I teach people about that quite a bit, and especially my kids and their friends about it, because I think it's just really, I think it's valuable for them to know how long things take. Like mastery takes some time and some turnover. And I think in this day and age, our kids are just so used to instant gratification that they don't quite understand, when they're watching somebody like a Tom Brady or whoever else they admire. I don't think they quite understand what they're seeing. You watch a Mikhail Baryshnikov dance ballet, you don't quite understand what you're seeing, but what you're seeing is 20 years of mastering something. And so anyway, that's really been my life. And now, I train people and teach people, how to do their story so that they can build their businesses. And that's what my wife and I do now.
And that's one of the areas I want to jump into kind of right away. But before I do that, something you said there at the end that I think is so applicable for everyone who listens, especially if you're a business owner. We have so many, and you've worked with a lot of them, right? A lot of our top advisors. You'll see some advisors, they're frustrated because they see someone else having this success like up here, at this high level, and that they're not there. And you kind of talked about being on stage. One of the things I always share with advisors is you're just seeing the front of stage final production. You don't get the benefit of seeing all the work that has gone on behind the scenes to get that show where it is today. And it is one of the things that I think most people overlook in business and life and anything. Like there aren't, despite what TV wants to feed you, there really aren't overnight successes. And I think not only are you a testament to that, but just seeing the work you've done with our advisors and helping them get better, you can see that too, right? If they put the reps in, they eventually get there.
Yeah. Why don't we, Cody, I don't know if we've talked about this book, but I love this book, and the title is Peak, P-E-A-K, Peak, written by Anders Ericsson. And he recently died, but he's really the godfather of excellence. Like what it takes, how long it takes, how many hours it takes. And he has this one quote in there that I just love, and I always share it with my kids. And the quote is this: there's no such thing as a prodigy, and there's no such thing as a shortcut. And if you can get your mind around those two things, because those two things is what, media, social media, our world pretty much promotes shortcuts, and they promote prodigies. Like, look at this 8th grader who's getting 40 scholarship offers. That is not real, right? Those people usually don't make it. You're seeing something that is not real. The people who make it, who are the ones who take the long road and grind it out. That's why people like I mentioned, like Tom Brady, you get a guy like that, Aaron Rodgers. If you look at the 3 guys that are up for the most valuable player in the NFL right now, there's 3 guys up for it. And one of them is going to win it. And one's Tom Brady, one's Aaron Rodgers, and one's this wide receiver no one's ever heard of named Cooper Kupp, who plays for the LA Rams out here. So just think of those 3 guys. The best player in the league that is the most competitive, that has the best athletes, those guys no one ever heard of. For one, Aaron Rodgers went to Butte Junior College. You ever heard of that? Butte Junior College in Chico, California. No one's
I have heard of Chico, just from you.
Yeah, that's right. And then Tom Brady, gets drafted, 199th guy drafted in the 6th round. They didn't even have 6 rounds anymore. And then this Cooper Kupp guy goes to a place called Eastern Washington, which is nowhere, that no one's ever heard of. But That's those guys. Here's the difference. They're not prodigies. What they are is they know how to work and they know how to fail. And they know that it takes a long time to get to the top. But once you're there, now you have mastered the principles of what it is to be the best. And those three have obviously done that in a world where everyone wants to go, well, get this guy out of Alabama or get this guy out of Clemson. He's a prodigy. He took the fast route right to the top. Be very leery of those promotions, right? Because my sense of reality, whether it's on stage or on the field or training or in business, I find that to be a myth, those shortcuts.
That's good. Hey, I said I had a little bit of a prop here for you. You gave me this football a while ago, and this may be a good story to talk before we dive into storytelling, but I think it's such a great example. But it also ties into what we were just talking about, right? Like it's the reps, putting in the reps and what it takes. And I've heard you share the story about just you and your brother growing up and all the work you put in. But you have this ball, it says, don't let the ball touch the ground. That you gave to me that kind of symbolizes. Would you mind sharing that story just to talk about? I think there's a couple cool principles out of there that apply to business.
Yeah, I agree. So when my kids were little, we go, how you get invited to all those darn birthday parties every damn weekend because your kid's in preschool. And so everybody's got a birthday every weekend. Well, when my first, she's 17 now, but when she was just born, we got her into this fancy preschool in Los Angeles, right? And every weekend, of course, was a birthday party. So like you, we would go to these fancy birthday parties in Brentwood and Beverly Hills and Santa Monica. So every weekend was the same. And every weekend I had to kind of stand by the rest of the dads. And all the dads in LA in this fancy preschool, their kids, all the dads were entertainment agents and entertainment lawyers. So imagine my predicament. I don't know how to contribute to them. I don't know how to talk to them. And they would all get in huddles in the backyard of these parties every weekend. So they would get in these huddles and they would brag about who they represent and all this. And then, I'd walk into these fancy backyards and they weren't like the backyards that you and me grew up in. Like they were fancy, man. They didn't have the rusty ass chain link fences that we had. I mean, they were fancy with sandboxes and piñatas, and Madonna would be over there and Paula Abdul would be over there, giving dance lessons. And I'd be there not knowing what to do. So every one of these parties was the same. So my son, Axel, he was about 2.5, maybe 3 at this time. We would bring our football from home because we always played catch with a football. And so we'd go in these backyards while everybody's playing, knocking piñatas and bragging about their fancy clients. My son and I would play catch with these little white plastic football, right? And we'd play with it. And at this one particular party, I was playing catch with Axel and he dropped the ball. And I said, Axel, don't let the ball touch the ground. And he goes, oh yeah, Dad. Oh, I forgot. Oh yeah. He picks it back up and we start playing catch again. Well, when I said that, this whole huddle of agents and lawyers heard me say it. They elected one of them to come over and have a little chat with me. You have to remember, we're in Brentwood. We're in Santa Monica. I know what's about to be lectured to me. And here it comes. He says this to me. He says, sir, so condescendingly, sir, what did you just say? What did you just say to that boy? And I said, that boy is my son. And I told him, don't let the ball touch the ground. And he said, well, you can't say that to that boy. Why would you say that? Why would you say such a thing to that boy? I said, that boy is my son. And I say that to him because that's a rule in our house. We don't let the ball touch the ground. And this guy is losing his mind. And he says, why, sir? You have to tell me why. Why is that a rule in your house? And I said, that's a rule in my house because that was a rule in my house growing up. because my dad got me and my brother a football every Christmas, a new football every Christmas. And my brother had to throw that ball to me 1,000 times per day. And my brother and I learned that ball, if that ball never touched the ground for that year, it would last to the next Christmas, because my dad wasn't getting us a new one if we ruined that one. That's why it's a rule in our house. And this guy's like, oh, really? And then he asked, how did that rule work out for you and your brother? And that's when I was just so happy he asked that question. And I said, yeah, it worked out pretty good for me and my brother. We both got to play in the NFL. And he said, really? And then he got so upset that he reported back to the rest of the agents and the lawyers. And I took my son. I said, Axel, pick that ball up off the ground. This family does not need it. We're taking it home with us. And we walked out of the party. I said, sweetheart, we're out of here. We're going home. And so I got in the car, put the kids in their car seats. My wife's sitting next to me. I'm driving home, and I'm so mad that I'm squeezing the steering wheel. You know, you've been in that position, and you're just shaking. And my wife's going, Bo, what's the matter? What happened, sweetheart? And all I remember saying is this: we're moving. And we got home, we packed up, we moved. And we moved outside of town, where excellence was just a little bit more accepted. I just did not want my kids around amateurs. I did not want my life and my life's kids in the hands of amateurs. So we moved. And so that's the story that Cody's talking about, where, you know, this rule that we have, what's funny about it is today, my son is now 15, right? So, you know, we'll go to family members' houses for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and Axel will bring his ball, right? He'll bring his football, but he's been not letting this thing touch the ground for so many years now that his standards are so high that he will not throw the ball to you if he thinks you're going to drop it. And so a lot of times, you know, his uncles or some other guy, Axel, hey man, throw me the ball. And Axel just holds the ball like this, and he goes, you could just see the rule cross his eyes. And he's just like, yeah, no. And so it's just a point of excellence. It's a point of a standard. And I heard the other day from a guy who works with my son as a quarterback coach. And the guy coaches Joe Burrow, right? He's a private coach for Joe Burrow as a quarterback. So and Joe Burrow, when he got to LSU, I guess there was this culture there was a lot of receivers were just dropping balls. They were just dropping balls left and right. Now, I don't know Joe Burrow. He doesn't know me. And so Joe Burrow wanted to put an end to that. So he just did like a culture shift and said, you know what, receivers, we're now going to implement a punishment, and there's going to be consequences for dropped balls. We just can't, it's not acceptable anymore. And they changed the rule, and they changed the punishment of what that meant. And he had that season at LSU, you know, that season that almost, you know, no one's really ever been able to duplicate. And he gives a lot of credit to the fact that he just shifted the culture ever so slightly, just that you guys, we're no longer going to let the ball touch the ground. That's it. And you know, you can kind of see the trajectory of his career based on those kind of culture changes that are so simple to do in business too.
Well, and that's one of the things we'll get into, I think, a little throughout the next time, you know, the time we have together. It's just raising that standard and that standard of excellence. And I think the thing that you've helped so many of our advisors in is seeing that, right? Like it's easy to be average, you know, and in this industry, you can do okay being average, but there's this next level. One of the areas that you've helped so many of them with is in storytelling. And I appreciate you kicking off with that story, because it's an example of a little bit of what you teach them to do. It's how to tell their story so well. And a lot of the advisors we work with do their marketing through live events. Maybe I'll just start off by, why is storytelling such a great way to connect with an audience?
Yeah. The number one, it's funny. We're talking about quarterbacks today, and it's kind of a theme, but I'll answer it like this. Trust is the most important reason story is key, and it's key to open with, because trust is at its lowest level that it's ever been, right? And this Gallup does a poll on this every year, and the last polling I've seen on it was before the pandemic started. So trust in our country and in the world was at the lowest it's ever been. So do you imagine that trust has improved or gotten worse in the last 2 years? Gotten worse.
Yep.
The quarterback coach I was just referring to, who coaches Burrow, he coaches a lot of NFL players. He's coaching my son. So he asked Axel this question, Cody. Axel, what is the most important thing for the success of a quarterback? What is the most important element you must have? So Axel, it's like 13 or 14 at the time. He's like going, well, a strong arm, leadership. And the coach keeps going, nope. And he keeps saying it. He keeps, being a captain, being a lead. Nope. And he goes, trustworthiness is the most important element for a quarterback. It is the hardest position to play. People have to trust you, not only your teammates, but the coaches, the ownership, the city, and the NFL at large has to trust you, because you hold the key to the kingdom. And you notice who wins, right? The ones who get the most trust. So here we are, back to storytelling, right? Storytelling opens up, drops everybody's armor. So everyone's got armor up right now, especially now. They've got armor that they've never had up. And this armor is protecting them from falsehoods, from misinformation, as they call it. So remember when you used to trust somebody in a white coat? Remember that?
Yep.
That wasn't that long ago. You used to trust. Remember when you used to trust people in the education system, like professors or teachers? Remember, we all trusted them. Remember when you used to trust somebody standing at a podium thundering away at you? Remember you used to trust that? Remember when you used to watch the news media and you would trust Walter Cronkite? Do you remember that? You trusted Walter Cronkite when he said, we just landed on the moon. But what do you do today? What are you doing today? If someone says, if Walter Cronkite came on today, if he were alive today, and he came on here in 2022 and said, we just landed on the moon, now we would go like this. I'm not sure about that.
Yep.
I don't know. And if a doctor tells you something, you go like this. I don't know. I'm not sure. So trust is at its lowest level. Here is the great news. A lot of people get depressed when I say that. Here's the great news for you and me. The only people that can restore that eroded trust over time, the only people who can restore that eroded trust is the storyteller, is the person with the courage to share themselves. And it's got to be personal. It's got to be revealing about the storyteller, like revealing about yourself. And once you do that, the armor that we all have up right now, this armor to protect ourselves from lies and misinformation, slowly starts to fade away. And when I say slowly, I mean within minutes. It starts to dissipate and then it's gone. And people trust storytellers, because you can't really refute story, right? Story is story, especially if it's personal. And now they have trust. Now you've gained the most valuable thing, not only to you and me as business people, but to quarterbacks too. So the number one element they have to have is trustworthiness. the very thing that financial advisors need to have, and speakers like me need to have, and people who run companies like Cody has to have, is he has to have trustworthiness. To do that, to tell a story is immediate and gets people to drop their armor. Now they trust you. Now they'll follow you. So imagine that in your business. Imagine that in your company, with people with the ability to trust you only because you shared a little piece of yourself. No different than how I shared, with you guys this morning about me drawing up my plan when I was 9 years old and trying to go to college and stuff like that. And then I told you another story about Axel not letting the ball touch the ground. Those are personal, intimate stories. But what they do is they connect you and me as human beings. And that is a lost art in our world. If you notice, our world is really into promoting inhuman things like being separate. That's not human. We're pack animals. We're like wolves. We're like lions. We like packs. We survive by being together and working together. Well, that's what you and me like to do. That's what storytelling does. And that's the way we build our companies, is with people, connective tissue with other human beings.
One of the things you talked about, being personal, being revealing. What are some of the other key components of making that story connect and build trust? And then also, as people are doing that, like, how long should that be? Especially as you're opening maybe a live event with that. Any guidelines around that?
Yeah, if you're opening a live event, and what would you say the average minute-wise or hour-wise, Cody, would be for the presentations that they're doing?
Probably an hour, roughly, right? Let's say around 60 minutes.
Yeah, so if you have an hour presentation, I would use anywhere from 5 to 10 to 12 minutes for your opening story. You can use that long, especially the better you get at it. And here's one thing us human beings are really good at. We're great at sharing our own story. We're really pretty darn good at that because we know it. It's not like we gotta memorize it so much. We know because we lived it. Yep. The problem with us is we think our own life is mundane. So we don't think we have a story, or we don't think people are going to care. But it's not mundane to your audience because they don't know what miles you've run. They don't know anything about you. They didn't know you went to a birthday party in Beverly Hills. That's interesting to people. But to me, that sounds kind of stupid, but not to other people. So 5, 10, 12 minutes tops probably for an hour. The longest story that I tell is about a 19-minute story, but I usually have 90 minutes or maybe a couple of hours. I'll throw that one in there. It's a good story, but it takes time for that story to deliver. But it does give me connective tissue almost immediately. Almost when you get your first words out of your mouth, you're going to have connection with other human beings, which is a huge, huge advantage to your business and to you. Because, and just think of right now, picture right now, the people that you do trust, the occupation that it might be a guy like Brady, like if you're, or like Mahomes, somebody who's won Super Bowls before. So with the ball in their hand, you actually trust them with the ball in their hands. Now, if you put an amateur quarterback in there with not as much trust, you're going like this. I do not feel good about this. And you start to get tense. Well, this is what your audience does when they have amateurs in front of them. If they have somebody presenting to them that doesn't share a personal story, they feel uneasy. They're just waiting for the ball to drop. They're hoping you do well. But if you share yourself, they go like this. They go, I'm like her. I'm kind of like him. I don't like those birthday parties either. Oh, I remember I made a dream when I was a kid and I did it and they told me no, but I just kept going. It puts you as one with your audience, that's what you need to build the trust. Because for you advisors, think about this on this podcast. If the advisors are on this podcast, I'd be thinking, wow, I'm going to be asking wealthy people who have built a life savings of wealth, and I'm going to ask them to hand that over to me for me to manage, for me to take care of. Well, you, more than anyone in the world, you have to gain the trust, no difference than those quarterbacks I'm talking about. You have to be trustworthy for people to hand over 40 years of their life savings to you. You got to be trustworthy. The quickest and most effective way to get there is by sharing yourself.
Bo, I've seen that. You know, when you've done that work with some of our advisors, just watching how they tell that story, how they connect, how personal they make it. And I think a lot of them early on didn't think they had a story. You walked them through a pretty good process to really dig deep and find that story. But man, I've heard some of them share, and I start crying, you're crying. You know, it's pretty wild to see, but you can just see the difference that it makes when they make that personal connection. So I've seen it firsthand how important it is. You know, another thing I want to ask you about, and people can probably see it if they watch the version of this, if they're watching on YouTube, they'll see even on this how physical you are, how much you move. But when you speak, I mean, it really is. I tell people it's like a performance. You command the stage. Eyes don't leave you the entire time, which is different than most people present. Let's just say it that way. What does that physical dimension bring to the audience that just words alone don't?
Well, so here's what the science says about storytelling and speaking. Your audience believes about 50% of what comes out of your mouth, right? So they believe 50% and they don't believe the other 50%. But they believe your body 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. So you definitely want to be physical in your storytelling because people are looking at your body, especially when you're in person in front of them on stage. The body cannot lie. I was trained by the greatest movement coach in the world, a guy named Jean-Louis Rodrigue, who trains a lot of movie stars, a lot of musicians, Olympic athletes. And all he's training them to be is what they naturally are, which is animals. Like we're animals, like human beings are animals, yet animals never apologize for their body. They never apologize for how big they are, how small they are. They never apologize for how they move. They just move with a purpose. Us humans, we're always trying not to take up too much space. We're all trying not to be too attractive or too tall or too small or too sexy, whatever our issue is. We're constantly broadcasting through our body to the world that I'm not as great as I appear. And it's an apology. Well, when you're presenting, when you're managing people's money, when you're the quarterback of their franchise, your body cannot apologize because they will smell a rat in 5 seconds and you will be gone. Your trust will be gone. So I've been trained to take on this body and move with a purpose. And not only a purpose, but the guy who trained me had me study predator cats, lions, cheetahs. We even looked at great white sharks. We even looked at falcons. How does a falcon hold its head? Does it when it doesn't get its kill, does it go like this? Oh, darn it. No. Does a cheetah, when it doesn't get the antelope, does it pout? Does it drop its? No. It is stoic. It stays upright. It stays like human beings were made to be. And once you learn this, and we train this in my events, is the promise that I make to the people that I work with, including the advisors at Advisors Excel, is this: if you do what I say, or you more importantly, you just do what I do, people really don't have the ability to look away from you.
Yeah.
They can't look away because you're now dealing with something that is kind of dangerous, if you will. And I don't mean you're going to scare your audience, but they're paying attention to you, no different than that they would pay attention to a lion that would be on stage. So I often ask audiences, I go, what if I put a cheetah up here on the stage? What do you think you'd do? And they always say the same thing. They always say, well, I wouldn't do anything. I would just hold still. And I go, yeah, that's what I do on stage too. I don't want my audience going to the bathroom. I don't want them texting their spouse. I don't want them moving. I don't want them opening a candy. I don't want them looking at their phone. I don't want anybody to move. So my guy trained me to do this. Well, that's what I train too. I train for people to do on camera and in person the things that I do, which is to revisit those predator cats and those animals and those occupations that you just cannot look away from. Right? Like Michael Jordan, well, I've seen him in person. It's weird, but when he's around you, you don't look away from him. Mm-hmm. You don't look, and it's not that he's the best looking guy in the world. It's not that. It's something else. He's unapologetic in his physicality. Imagine that. Imagine, you might know some people who are like this. There's not very many of us left because it's been promoted right out of us. It's been kind of shamed right out of us. But it is such a powerful thing, Cody, that I think it's worth the time to talk about and address for people, because when you are that, and you've been this in your life, it's like often I'll say to the ladies in my audiences or my clients, and I'll say, ladies, do you think the stuff I'm talking about is masculine? And they'll go, yeah, I think it's a little masculine for us. I don't think we get this. And I always laugh at them because they get it better than most men. You know why? Because they have ability to have a child. So I don't know if you're married and you have kids, or I know Cody is, and I have 3 kids, and I was raised by a mom who had 6 kids, and they are predator animals when it comes time. If someone's out to destroy their kids' dreams or physically hurt their children, I saw what my mom did, and I've seen what my wife does. They turn into what they were made to be, which is that grizzly bear, that mama of cubs. And anybody who got in between that, their physicality just came alive. Well, that's the same thing I train, and Jean-Louis trained me. But when he trains female performers, that's what he trains them on. It's like, let's get that grizzly bear up and running, and let's see what that looks like on stage. And let's see what that looks like during a presentation or in front of a camera. Because most people like you might be thinking, well, Bo, I don't want to scare everybody away. I don't want to scare my audience. You know, you won't. They don't know what you're doing. All they're doing is paying attention. All they're doing is they're not looking away from you because they feel your presence. That's why that's so key.
It's funny, I was thinking about that with Dawn, when we were at dinner a few months ago, and we were talking about some of the things with Axel in school. Even as you said that, I remember her kind of up on the edge of her chair, like the level of engagement as she even talked about that. Just as you were sharing that, I'm like, man, that's right. I remember kind of seeing it a little too. So it's a good reminder of that. One of the things even advisors, when they first come to this event that we've done with you over the years, a lot of them are like, I don't have a story. I don't know where to start. Would you talk a little bit about just a few strategies on how to develop that story? And then I'll probably ask you to share a little bit about the event that you do that is really designed to help them do that. But maybe just share like, hey, here's a few ways to try and connect with or figure out that story.
Yeah, I'll give you a 5-second exercise right now. What is the proudest, greatest moment of your life? 5 seconds. Okay, great. Forget about that one. It's not a good story. Now, I'll give you another 5 seconds. This time, I want you to think of your lowest point. The point where you looked around and there were no answers for you. 5 seconds. Think of that moment. That's a great story. That's a great story. If you notice, great storytelling doesn't come from achievement or good times. It comes from struggle. That's why if you and me were about to make a movie today about climbing Mount Everest, where do you suppose we would start that movie? And where do you suppose we would end that movie? What if we started the movie at the top of the mountain? Would that be a good start? No, that's a bad start. That's a bad start. No one cares that you got to the top of the movie. No one cares that you won. They don't. They don't care that you won. People care about where you started and how hard it was to win. That's the story. So your story, the story you've been hiding your whole life and you don't share with potential clients because you're afraid they're going to think you're a loser or you were bankrupt at one time or you got cut from the high school basketball team. Those are the stories you have to tell, the one you've been hiding all this time, because that's the connective tissue you need, because that's what audiences are attracted to, and that's what they trust. That's why every Rocky movie, how many Rocky movies can there be? 6 or whatever it is? But Sylvester Stallone was very smart when he was an unemployed actor. He said, I'm going to write a movie about a bum fighter, a loser fighter named Rocky. And the nemesis that I'm going to put in front of Rocky is Apollo Creed, the heavyweight champion of the world, rich and funny and good looking and a family man. Well, Sylvester Stallone knew that everybody, because storytelling is a science, right? It's been going on for millennia. He knew that if he put himself in the lower position, the David position instead of Goliath, he knew everyone would choose him. He knew he would be the hero of that story because Rocky starts at the bottom and ends at the top. Every movie, every story you've ever heard that's worth its salt is told the same way. But you and me as business people, we go like this. Well, Bo, I don't want to talk about my struggles. I don't want to talk about the time my dad lost all of our money. And, we had to, we were bankrupt and we had we had to battle to make any kind of money and we lost our home. That's what connects you to people. People won't think you're a loser. They'll see you as the hero of the story because guess where you are now? You own a business. You manage other people's money. You make other people great. You make other people's dreams come true. And that came from the pain of your dad losing all that money. That's great storytelling. Those are the stories we should be telling. One of the, I won't say her name, but one of the advisors at Advisor Excel, top of the food chain, right? Amazing gal. She had a similar story like that of pain, right? She said, Bo, there's no way in hell I'm telling that story. I said, yes, you're going to tell that story. And she goes, no one's going to give me their money. No one's going to trust me, Bo, if I tell that story. Because the story it was a little bit dark where, her dad left her as a child. So she says, there's no way, no one will trust me. I said, please tell them that story. And kicking and screaming, she finally tells the story. Well, now when the clients come into her office for the meeting, they don't just come in. They come in and they're teary-eyed and they're hugging her and they're going, I had the same thing happen to me. Because people connect to struggle and loss. They don't connect to being at the top of Mount Everest. They connect at being at the bottom of Mount Everest. That's the story. So that little exercise should give you the hint of where to go. But here's the beauty of it. You and me and Cody, all of us have already faced the struggle. We've already beat the struggle. But now you get paid for that. Now you get attraction for that. Right? Now it pays off. All the pain that you've already been through, now it pays off. Because you know that's your best connective tissue. And now the trust the trust level goes up, the armor goes down, and now you build your company. You build your dreams based on stories of struggle. Okay?
I've seen her tell that story to an audience, and you could hear a pin drop and not an eye moves off her, right? It really is spectacular. I think the other thing that's kind of wild is I've watched you take, hundreds of our advisors through that. When they connect with that story and then they make the connection about why they're so good as an advisor, how many of them, something in their life that tended to be that low point kind of drove them to wanting to do this. I think we've seen it. So many of them, you can see they want to be a protector and they want to help people, with some of the things that they've overcome. So it's powerful. I want to talk a little bit about another topic that you talk a lot about, that you and I have talked a lot about, and that is greatness. And we kind of talked about that at the beginning, raising that bar. But you've seen greatness, obviously, in athletics. You've seen it on stage and on screen. What is it that you see that separates the pretenders versus the truly great ones?
Oh, man, I love we start talking about this stuff, because I have noticed something, and it's not just me noticing it. The scientists, they're the ones who notice this stuff, and they start to put together the studies and all that and they start to see things that everybody who's world class, no matter if it's an athlete or a business person or a politician, they all do the same exact couple of things. And it's only a couple of things, and they're almost too simple to even talk about. And when I talk about this to my kids and teach, business people about this, I can see them rolling their eyes like, that's too easy. That's so easy to do. I want something more complex. Here it is. I'll boil it down with this study. So the only people who in the NFL, the only players in the NFL who really make the money, because your initial contract, relatively is not that big, given the grand scheme of things. But the players who really make the good money are the players that get to their second and third contract. That's where the big money is for an NFL player. Well, they've studied all these players, right? And the players that get to their second and third contract, so really the only players that make any money in the NFL, do two things and two things only different than the rest of the players who refuse to do these two things. Guess what number one is? Number one is training facilities in the NFL open around 8 o'clock, right? That's when your workday starts, 8 o'clock. The players that make it to their second and third contract get there at 6:30. So I know that sounds crazy, right? Okay, what does that mean, 6:30? So they're the first to arrive, right? They're the first to arrive. And the second thing they do is they take an ice bath after the day is over. So those two things seem kind of simple, right? So let's just break those two things down and equate this to your business, no matter what it is. If you're getting someplace before everyone else is there, what are you actually doing? In my eyes, that tells me that person is preparing to prepare. They don't wing it. They activate whatever needs to be activated. So if you're an athlete, that's your body and your brain. So you have to activate early. It also tells me, if you're an athlete, that you're getting treatment, like you're getting, all the, take a little time. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Cody?
Sound like a car or something, huh?
Yeah, it was a big trash truck. Okay. So where should I go back to? Do you remember where? After ice bath?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about this. Getting someplace early is activation. That's how I equate it. Activation, meaning getting yourself warmed up. So if you're a speaker, that's your voice, that's your body, that's your movement, that's your content. If you're the boss, that's getting this body activated, worked out, blood moving. Neuropatterning, working, healing, right? Before everyone else, so that when everyone else gets there, you're already firing on all cylinders. Then now let's go to the ice bath at the end of the day. So most NFL players who don't make the money, as soon as the bell rings and it's time to get out of their practice, they sprint to their car. And the young guys sprint to dinner, drinks, cocktails, the club, whatever, all those attractive things when you're young and you have money for the first time. But the people who are smart don't do that. They recover because they know they've got to repeat it the next day. So they get the ice bath. They recover. They take time to recover because they know the morning is going to come. And then those people don't go to the clubs. They have to get to bed because they know 6:30's coming the next morning. And I'm not kidding you, Cody. Whatever discipline we're talking about, whether it's ballet dancing or in the finance world or the athletic world or the greatest performers that I've ever worked with on stage, speakers, dancers, musicians, actors, they're very serious about the activation before they get to work and the recovery after they're done with work. And it is a slippery slope if you mess one of those up. Like if you skip one of those, now you're just going down the slippery slope, because if I activate well, I'm going to have a good day, right? But if I don't recover from that good day, now I'm behind the 8 ball again. And if you notice the same names that we keep kind of repeating here, the same excellence that is out there that we can keep repeating, those two things I find to be just by the book. I have a friend he's my favorite writer. His name's Stephen Pressfield. A lot of you have probably heard of him. I think he's one of the greatest writers going. And he wrote a book called The War of Art, which is an amazing book. And he's written several books, but that's the one that really jumps out at me. He's a professional writer, right? Professional writers write. And they're scheduled writing, like they have 3-hour blocks of writing. They do not skip that block. They prepare for that 3-hour writing block, and then they recover from that 3-hour writing block because they know they've got to repeat it again tomorrow. Those are the pros. Those are the pros. Just think about what that means to your business. If you can apply just those principles, what that would mean to your business. I know one thing, Cody, is that I've told my sons and my daughters the importance of that, and I tell them through story, and I tell them through the Jerry Rice story, which Jerry Rice, he's the greatest player I ever played with, and certainly the greatest in the history of the game. The one thing about him, and again, he went to some college called Mississippi Valley Nowhere, right? Most touchdowns scored ever. He was always the first to practice. He's the best player on the team, first there. Always the last guy to leave. Why is that? Why is Peyton Manning, which I've watched you interview Peyton Manning before, why is this guy, he's the first guy there in the morning, he's the last guy to leave. And it seems to be just a recurring theme in every business. So I always say to my kids, I go, why don't you do that? Knowing the truth about this. This training's about 100% accurate. If you do those two things, you're going to move the dial in your company, in your performance. So why would you not do it? Being that it takes no talent, being that I don't have to be 6'8", being that I don't have to, be able to run this fast. Why wouldn't you do that? Because you're going to get paid. You're going to have influence. You're going to be the leader of the team if you just implement two little simple things. And everybody can do it, but here's the deal, Cody. Almost nobody does it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Almost nobody does it.
It reminds me this, a few months ago, I went to this event in Nashville, and they had a guy, his name was Chris Ogilvy. He runs a big company that hires all these writers, right? So he's the writing production company, whatever you would call it. And someone asked him, they said, what's the difference between the writers that make it, that have these hit songs, and those that don't? You know what he said? He said, generally speaking, the ones that are putting out these number one hits consistently, he's like, they're the ones that show up every day and write. He's like, others, they'll show up, write for a few days. You won't see them for a week. He's like, the best, every single day. They know they've got that time block. They're in the studio, they're writing, and they're working. And he's like, it's not, he's like, same thing with artists. He's like, candidly, most of the people that you see in Nashville that make it as performers are the ones that show up every day. They show up and they put the work in, and it's just, it probably is not a coincidence that you see that consistently across any industry, right?
Yeah, no, it's astounding to me as as I turn 60, I'm just like looking back on my life and the performers and players that have been around, and they all are the same. There's just a handful of them, that I can name. They're all the same. They operate professionally. And I played with some great players who were completely unprofessional and completely flying by the seat of their pants, and they were fun and they were crazy, and it was kind of watching a slow motion car accident. It was that way, and they're predictable. Those guys are predictable. I love those guys because of what they represented, but the guys who moved the dial over time were the guys that you just mentioned, the guys and the gals who just show up, they do their work, they have a ritual before they start, they have a ritual as they end, and that's pretty much it. They activate and they recover from that professional workday.
That's good. Okay, one final question, then I'm going to jump into some lightning round. You wrote a book that I recommend everyone read, that there's no plan B for your A game. And we're not going to dive into the book a ton, but would you just talk about how you even came up with the title? I think the title alone is a great title.
Yeah. What I noticed too about, the 60 years of being around great performers, and then being around kind of mediocre performers, and being around like world-class performers, but not the very top. Those kind of areas. Here's one thing I noticed about all of them. The very tip top, the best, they don't have an option to be second best. It's just not in their makeup. They just don't operate that way. It's like, I have a buddy he's the most decorated water polo player of all time. And he's won 4 Olympic medals. 1 is gold, 1 is silver. I think 2 are bronze. He's also been the coach of our team. I see the gold medal in his office because he's a chiropractor now. He's a great dude, and I see the gold medal every time I go see him. And I go, "Hey Terry, what's it? I love the gold medal, man, but where's your other medals? What's a silver medal look like? And where's your bronze medal?" And he's like, he can't remember where it is. He's like, I don't know. I don't know where it is. And I was like, God, that is so true. Every person that I know that has won a silver medal or a bronze medal. Now, to you and me, that's like, damn.
Pretty good.
You want a silver medal? Like, I'd like a silver medal, and I'm proud of them, right? But they didn't start playing water polo for a silver medal at 7 years old. And you didn't start your business to go, I hope I come in second place with this company I'm building. Like, I'm sure, you guys didn't start Advisors Excel going, wow, I guess a bronze would be fine. No one starts that way. Kids don't start that way. And what I have found is that the people who have the most options available to them never really go to the very, very top because they have options to not go to the top. Isn't that cool? So when I'm raising my kids, I always think, well, I'll give them more options than me and my brother had. Well, me and my brother had zero options. Like, if we did what everyone else is doing in our hometown, we'd be driving a tractor, right? I'd be driving a tractor today, and I might weigh 300 pounds, and I might be drunk while I'm doing it, right? So that was kind of the option, right? So that didn't seem like an option to me and my brother. So our option was, what if we played pro football? And that was the option that we took. And a 20-year journey along that way, trying to get to the NFL, everybody said no. Everybody said, you can't make it. Everybody said no the whole way until it actually happened. And so that's why the title of the book. I think we have too many options available to us. We have too many silver medals available to us. So human nature will have us reduce ourselves to whatever that easier option is, instead of that difficult option. And I've noticed that when you only have one option, guess what happens to your life? That one option. That one option actually happens because you don't have an option for it not to happen. You got no fallback plan. You got no soft landing spot. You got nobody who's going to rescue you. You got to be able to come through for yourself. And I find that the people like that come through for themselves. That's why that's the title of the book.
That's great. Everyone should go pick it up. It's a great read. Had my kids read it also. So you good to jump into a couple quick lightning round questions?
Sure.
Okay, let's do them. And I end everyone with these. So, as you look back over the past, let's just say 2 years now, I guess, what lesson did you learn that you'll carry forward for the rest of your career or your life?
Oh, so good. So good. And this is the first thing I thought of when this happened 2 years ago, 18 months ago. I said, I built a team, right in the middle, right when this thing started, I built a team because I knew a team was the key for however long this thing was going to last.
Yep.
You had to have, because inside a team is safety and security. So we needed a team. The first team rule that we came up with these 45 people was this. Teams create their own reality. We follow our own rules. We make up our own rules and then we follow them. We live from our own reality that we agree to. We don't rely on the outside world of our reality. Boy, did that save our ass. Because if we relied on the outside reality, how everybody had their own, like a different reality. Like, this is dangerous. That was certain people's reality. This is a joke. That was other people's reality. And there was all kinds of so-called experts and realities happening, right? So no one knew what to believe and everyone felt kind of out of balance. Well, and I learned this from playing team sports, is a team is insular with their reality and with their rules. And I'm sure you've done this at AE. You're insular in the fact that you're not looking on the outside of what the press is saying about you. Like, oh, AE's no good, or the Houston Oilers suck and they'll never win a Super Bowl. We could not read the newspapers, so we didn't rely on what was coming from the outside of our locker room. And I'm sure you had to do that to a certain extent for a certain time because you wanted to create your own culture and your own reality. I'm telling you, during this last 2 years, that has saved my butt, our company's butt, my kids' butt, because they thought their dreams were over because they couldn't go to school or they couldn't go to practice or they couldn't play in these games. I said, no, this is to our advantage. This shutdown is to our advantage. We create our own reality inside of this shutdown. You see what I mean?
Yep.
So all things that happen in the world are now working in your favor. Regardless if it's earthquakes or tornadoes, it is now working to your benefit. There's something I learned from playing sports at a high level too, Cody, that goes along with this, which is this. I played in the Houston Astrodome as a pro, so it's 72 degrees in there every single day, right? So it was nice. It was nice. We were indoors, playing football indoors. And so whenever we had to go up to Buffalo or Cleveland or some godforsaken place that was 9 below zero, and we had to play a game, the whole team, all 45 of us would be going like this. Oh, we're going up to Buffalo this week. Oh, man, you know what's good? Good thing for us? Good news for us is we played great in 9 below zero. We are a 9 below zero team. We've always practiced in it. We've always played well in it. We've never been outside of 72 degrees in practice. But we believe and we make up our own reality that when we get to Buffalo, it's going to be to our advantage. And it turns out it was. So I don't care what the conditions are. I don't care what's happening in the world. It is to our advantage.
That's good. Okay, second question. What's the one thing that you've done to graduate from good to great in your profession?
Every time I enter a profession, the 3 or 4 times that I've done it, I say that we want to be the best. And with the best, that just goes with the principles of what the world-class people that we're talking about. But it's company-wide. Like to have great company, we got to be the most generous. We got to give the most of ourselves. We gotta, every time we're on stage, everything we do is well thought out and for a purpose. So, the principles of being the best as a singular person are the same principles that it takes to be the best as a company, as a franchise. So if and they say the great leaders only know how to lead, they know how to lead themselves. And the principles of leading yourself are the same principles you use to lead others, right? You follow the same principles. So I always do that. I always put the word the best in whatever we're doing. That way I'm held to a certain standard and the people that work with me can get used to that culture of being held to that standard too. And then my team, they're held to that standard too. So my son, he's a quarterback, so he's going to this high school and he's young, right? He's only a freshman, but he's got to change the culture because some of the players don't want to get there early. They don't want to stay late. So as soon as he starts doing that, then another kid will join him. He'll start to get there early. He'll start to stay there late. And then 3 people will join, then 4. And then the whole team is going to be there early and go be there late. And that's when you behave your way into a championship. It's just a behavior, right? So the behavior of my company, that's what makes us great, right? It's not that we're like, hey, we're just great. We just showed up and we're great. We're not the smartest, but we're going to give the most.
That's good. Is there something you're doing this year to drive your own personal growth that you're excited about?
Yeah, you know what, Cody? The only way to drive my personal growth is I have to put myself in between a rock and a hard place. Because that's the only way adaptation can take place. I mean, that's just, the science or the physics or the chemistry of it is, the world was not created by great men or great women. The world was created by demanding situations. And then those great men and women rose to the occasion. They adapted to the demanding situation. And then that's where they were. So I put my butt in between that rock and hard place where I have to adapt. And there's one thing that I've done this year, and it might sound remedial to some of you, but it really moves the dial in my personal life. And I think it might move the dial for my family and for my company is I'm not blaming anymore. I'm not going to blame coaches for certain things that happen on sports teams. I'm not going to blame audiences for not getting what I'm saying. I'm not going to blame my clients for not getting it or not being smarter or not working harder. I'm going to take the onus on myself. Kind of like I use the word captaincy. It's like being captain of the team, that trustworthy piece we talked about earlier. If I'm responsible for their success, my kids' success, my client's success, everybody's success around me, that's really what a captain does. Captains of industry do that. Captains of teams do that. Captains of the soul do that. They actually, they're not typically the best player. They're typically the player that assures victory to everybody else, right? I want to take that on. So I can no longer look look outside of myself and point a finger and go, you know what? I wish my son's coach was better. I wish my daughter's volleyball team was better. I wish those other players were better. I'm not doing that anymore. I used to do that. And I think I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that, over the 60 years. This year I decided I'm taking responsibility for that. I'm not going to blame anybody else for it, because in the end, it's never the coach and it's never the other players that make you lose. It's you. It's always you. I love that Jocko, I can't pronounce his last name, but he wrote the book, Extreme Ownership. I'm sure you've had him speak for your people or going to have him, but he's amazing. That extreme ownership. I love this sentence. He said, there's no such thing as a bad team, only bad leadership. So if you look at, the up and coming Super Bowl, the Super Bowl and the playoffs are about to start, right? So don't look at the teams, look at the leadership. It's always the leadership, because everybody's got good players, It's always that person who the players trust the most that's eventually going to win that thing. And that's why the same guys kind of repeat over and over again. The same people kind of do it.
Yep, that's good. Okay, fourth question. You recommend, you mentioned a few books on there, but is there one book that you've recommended the most to other entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders?
Yeah. I think the book that I recommend the most, which isn't a business book, it's Stephen Pressfield's book. It's The War of Art. I mentioned it earlier. Yeah. It's the reason I love it so much is I'm not particularly like a fast reader, but it's a small book and it's bite-sized, but he's such a good writer. And the whole book is about resistance to our own greatness, resistance to our own potential. And he delineates what it is to be a pro and what it is to be an amateur. And it's a book you can read in a couple of hours. But I just open up that book to any page, any day of the week, any hour, and read a paragraph and go, I am good to go. Because there's a huge difference between pros and amateurs. And I love how he sums it up. Amateurs play for fun. Amateurs play for fun. Pros play for keeps, which is why they show up early, which is why they stay late, which is why they run the extra miles. And I am I am the most resistant person to my own greatness, like my own potential. And so are you. And so when you read a paragraph of that book, just pick it up and read it. And it puts me right back in the game on my own side instead of against myself, this resistance.
Yep.
Really effective for anybody because, we all have this potential, but we're all the biggest enemies to that potential. We all just, shooting ourselves in the foot at any chance we get. And if we don't do that, then guess what happens? We, go right to the top.
It's a great book. I actually have my son reading it right now. He's in the middle of reading it right this day. So it's a good one. Okay, final question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That would be from my dad, who was like a cowboy, like a rancher, kind of farmer kind of guy. Dirty all the time, right? Dirty cowboy hat all the time, fingernails dirty all the time. So people didn't think he was too smart. I mean, he went to college and stuff. He played football in college, fought in Korea. But the way he woke my sisters, I have 4 older sisters, my 4 older sisters, my older brother and me, the way he woke us up, and it was so simple what he said. He often used cuss words, right? Because I don't know why That generation, every other word was a cuss word, right? And that's how he was too. But it kind of gave punctuation to his message. He would wake us up every morning. He would pull the covers back on our beds and rub our back. And he didn't rub it like gently, like, hey, little son, time to wake up. And it would be 5 a.m, right? It wasn't late. He would rub our backs really gruff, and he would whisper in our ears and tell us we were the best. And then he'd drop some foul language right about there. But he always told us we were the best. Till the day he died, I had kids at the time. I was married at the time. He was still telling us, you're the best. And he would make a fist and go, you're the best. You're the best. And that was a sense of embarrassment for growing up for me and my brother, especially going on dates and stuff. big contingency. We had with Dad, come on, don't say that. Don't say that in front of people, especially when we're not the best. But he said it, and he kept saying it in front of people. He didn't care. I saw him saying it in front of, like, pro coaches who didn't believe us, college coaches who didn't believe in us. He would tell them, no, they're the best. They're the best. Until me and my brother and my sisters finally figured out, like, maybe he's right. Maybe we are. Maybe we're here to be the best. That's the best advice I've ever had, because it had the most lasting effect. And it's the thing that I tell people when I talk to them, including my kids. I wake them up every morning the same way, because it's true. He saw our greatness. He saw something we couldn't see in ourselves, right? And I always think that's the best advice. Somebody who sees you, the stuff about you that you just can't see for yourself, and they speak it right into existence, and then you become what they see. That's great advice. I start waking up your kids like that.
That's awesome.
You can use the foul language or not.
No, I love it. Bo, my brother, it's always great. Anytime we're together, I leave energized. So I appreciate you taking the time today. Real quick, if anyone wants to learn more about you, connect with you online, what's the best way for them to connect or stay in contact with you?
Yeah. The team gave me a text number where they can text me.
Okay.
Text this, you guys. And you guys can put this in the notes.
Yep.
Text No Plan B, title of the book. Text No Plan B to 323-310-5504. 323-310-5504. Text No Plan B to that number, and I'm going to send you more information. I'm going to send you a guide on 7 ways to play a bigger game, because I think that's usually holds us back. We're just not playing a big enough game. So we'll send that to you.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. And I know you're on a few social media. I see you on Instagram maybe once in a while. So, or at least I see the kids on there. I see you posting pictures of the kids too. So
yeah,
that's great.
That's true.
All right, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe so you can get all the latest episodes as they come out. Would love to have you leave a 5-star review so other people know that this is a valuable use of their time also. And Bo, as always, appreciate it, man. It was great.
Thanks, Cody. Always great to see you.